Third week of our Faith Experiment series, and we're also 5 weeks from Easter. It's amazing how it comes around every year, doesn't it? And the backdrop has the Easter, and I'm going to share about an Easter goal in just a second. But before I do that, I want to share that today's message is called So You Say You Believe, But You Trust More in Your Own Ability. We're going to talk about trusting in God, trusting in our own ability. And I want to remind us of this. Belief is something that happened in the past. Trusting God is something that's happening right now. Belief is something that's often in our head. Trusting in God is something that happens in our heart. Belief is something we can talk about. Trusting in God is something that we do. But let me share about staff meeting last week. Any of you guys ever wanted to come to staff meeting at Hope Church? Yeah, okay, Daniel, there, great. Staff meeting, Daniel, you can come by, come on. Next time you change jobs, we'll let you come to staff meeting. Last week at staff meeting, it started out this way. I wrote this on the whiteboard. I wrote, Hope Church is awesome, like that. And I asked the staff, I said, so do you think Hope Church is awesome? And there was like this awkward silence. And what happened was they didn't know if it was like a trick question. They're like, am I supposed to say yes, woo? Or are we going to talk about the ways that we can improve, you know? So there was this moment, and I said, come on, guys, Hope Church is awesome. I said, Hope Church is amazing. And they're like, woo-hoo. So I want to ask you guys this morning, do you think Hope Church is awesome? Yeah. So I helped you with my voice inflection there, didn't I? But then I wrote something else on the board. And I wrote this. Look at this. I'm being a good steward. I wrote this. People need Jesus. And that really is an E right there, just so you know. But I wrote, people need Jesus. And I asked the question. I said, which one comes first? Which one comes first? It's a little bit of a trick question because it's easy to believe that if we'll just make Hope Church awesome, if we'll just have really awesome worship, and if all of our programming will be really great, and if we have the best sermons ever, and if we knock it out of the park in the lobby, and if we have awesome Hands of Hope, and awesome Easter worship, and awesome Vacation Bible School, that what will happen is because Hope Church is so awesome, people will find Jesus. But here's where we landed, and here's where we needed to land. Our heart has to put people finding Jesus first. You see, because that's what we're about. People need Jesus. And so I want to ask you, would you agree with me that people need Jesus? Would you agree with me that the person to your right and left needs Jesus? Would you agree with me that the person behind you in front of you needs Jesus? Would you agree with me that you need Jesus? Would you agree with me that every person driving by on Highway 120 right now, going back and forth and back and forth and back the whole time we're worshiping, that every person needs Jesus? Would you agree with me that people need Jesus? Yeah. But this one comes first. You see, we like to think that if we can just make an awesome church, then the byproduct will be that people will find Jesus. But so often, that's not the case. But if our heart, if the things we do, if the things we say, if the things we care about, if the things we dream about, if the things we invest in are that our concern is that people need Jesus, then in the middle of that journey, we end up with an awesome church. But if we just want an awesome church, so often we never reach people meeting Jesus. Seeing it happen over and over and over again. And our Easter goal is that we want to have 600 people in worship. Does that feel pretty aggressive? Feels pretty aggressive. So I know we've had 600 people in worship on Easter before at Hope Church at some point in our history, and I know we have, so we can do it. Now, where does that goal come from? Well, we think that we have about 300 people who regularly attend worship at Hope. I'm talking folks who are here most Sundays. They miss a Sunday every now and then. Not folks who come every 3 months, that's not regular worship attendance, but folks who are here. So, have you done the math yet? If every person who regularly attends Hope, invites a friend, shows up on Easter Sunday, we'll have 600 people in worship. And we can celebrate that. So, don't you love it when churches have numbers like that? Like, isn't that what it's about? I mean, we just want to have 600 people in worship so we can feel good about ourselves. We just want to have 600 people in worship so we can grow our church, you know, so we can go home and we can call mom. We say, our church is awesome. Actually, the reason we want to have 600 people in worship is so that I can go to the preacher's meeting and I can say, my church is bigger than yours. Right? No. I mean, that could be the reason, but there's a deeper reason. I believe out of the sea of people in our community, out of the sea of humanity, everywhere we go, on 278, down 120 at Walmart, into downtown Dallas, back into Cobb County, that there are 300 people who need Jesus. That there are 300 people who their life would benefit from knowing about the love and grace and forgiveness and lordship and salvation of Jesus Christ. I believe there are 300 people that have gifts to give to the kingdom that could become part of who we are so that our mission will flourish, so that we can be more about the business of sharing Jesus with people, not just so we can have a big Sunday. You see, we set a goal because we want Hope Church to be awesome, but our heart has to be, people need Jesus. People need Jesus. You know, this belief and this trust dynamic is weird. I got the idea from a book called The Christian Atheist by Craig Groeschel. And that's where he came up with the phrase. He says, so you say you believe in God, but you don't blank. And so today, you say you believe in God, but you trust more in your own ability. And I want to remind you that in Scripture we find that it says that even the demons believed, but they trembled in fear. So believing is not the same thing as acting. Now, when I think of my ability, do you have abilities? I have some abilities. I mean, you know, my shirt, you know, I have some abilities. When I think of my abilities, I go old school. I think of this old commercial. You know how jingles, sometimes they just get stuck in your head? It has to do with the Army, you know? And I love it when our computer just breaks down right in the middle of a sermon, you know? There we go. All right. We're working on it. We're going to restart it or something. Don't let it distract you, okay? But I go old school. Not Army strong. I go old school than that, because in my teenage years and young adult life, when I would think of accomplishing something big, this little song would ring in my head. Be all that you can be in the... See, a lot of us already know it. In the Kramer. Here we go. Good job, guys. Good job. Yeah, so when I would think about accomplishing something, when I would think about maybe finishing a project around the house, when I would think about doing something at church, you know, finishing a big outreach project or building a building, or when I would think about something I was just going to go out and tackle, you know, I'd be like, be all that you can be. And I want to say at one level, that's good. I'm not here today to say that kind of ambition, that kind of motivation is a bad thing for our lives. We need, at one level, to try to reach for excellence, to reach for achievement, to be all that we can be. I think God applauds it when we enter into an exercise or workout program. We try to take care of our body. When we try to eat well, I think God applauds it when we attempt to gain financial freedom in our life. I think God applauds it when we attempt to take care of our appearance and be handsome and maybe even update our wardrobe a little bit. When we work long hours to get that college degree or high school degree. When we do an extra good job and get a promotion. I mean, be all that I can be. I think God applauds all of that. There's a balance there. Because when we start being full of that ambition and I'm going to achieve, there's got to be a place where we sort of have a governor on that. a place where God is directing and guiding, because there's a backside. There's a downside to being all I can be. One of the downsides to being all I can be is that it's just way too stressful. I mean, we think we want to be God, but I don't want to be God. I mean, we want to be God so we can make all the decisions, but I mean, you really want to be God? I mean, it's just way too stressful to do everything of my own ability, to make myself into a little God in my own little world, and that everything revolves around me, and I'm here to carve out my life instead of recognizing it as a gift. The other backside of achieving, of being all I can be, is that it prevents us from being faithful to what God expects from us. And I'm talking to followers of Jesus here. I'm talking to believers. It prevents us from following God's call for our life. It makes our faith legalistic. It places a great burden on our shoulders. It makes serving God a push instead of a passionate joy. It limits what God can do through us. It limits the joy that God can bring to our life through service. It limits the growth and change that can happen in our heart and our soul. We become, because we're all about ourselves, because it's up to my ability, I limit what God can do in my life. Here's the other backside. Life is hard, and we need Jesus. Life is hard, and we really do need Jesus. The people will disappoint us. They will. Plans don't work out. Problems come without asking, don't they? Anybody ever had a problem that asked to come into your life? I'm not talking about a person. Anybody ever had a problem that knocked on the door? May I come in? I mean, wouldn't that be awesome? You could just say no and close the door, but problems just barge right in. And we need Jesus. Another backside is that when we trust more in our own ability, we'll never accomplish anything great for God. Some people say, well, that's just a logical sentence. You trust more in your own ability. You'll never do anything for God. It's true. Let me give you an image that I hope will make that clear. Back in the days of being an interim youth pastor, not that long ago, but sometimes if churches are between staff, then guess who gets to, you know where the buck stops, don't you? Anyway, it stops right here many times, So we got a youth trip planned, and it's an all-night trip to Six Flags, which is pretty awesome. I mean, most people want to do that, right? If you're not under 18. Anyway, but I signed up and I said, I'm going to lead the kids. And I was excited about it, and we pumped them up, and we got a great crowd that went. And I knew that there were a lot of kids going who hadn't made a decision to follow Jesus. And part of that night, it was put on by, I believe, Young Life or some kind of organization like that. They literally rented out Six Flags for this event. And they had a lot of different shows and events that you could go to besides just riding the rides. And so I told our group, I said, you can go to as many of those shows as you want to, but we're all going to this one together. Because aside from the fun of the rides and the theme park, I wanted them to hear about Jesus. And so I picked out the one I thought might be the most interesting and might have the clearest message, and it was the strong man talk. You know about the strong men that talk about Jesus, and they sort of equate feats of strength to Jesus' work in our lives. And there's a guy in there, he came in third in the Heisman Trophy voting. There's another guy like a world champion weightlifter. I mean, these guys were busting out of their clothes everywhere, and they had on tight clothes just to prove it, right? And they'd come up, they'd be like, "Rrr." They'd like bend cooking pans in half. They would do amazing feats. And I remember this one guy back when we used to have phone books, they're like that thick, He like ripped the thing in half. He's like grabbed it and he's like, "Rrrr." And we were all amazed. And then he started talking about Jesus. I could tell the kids were paying attention. I was like, this is awesome. He's doing such a good job of explaining who Jesus is. And then you want to know what happened? The next act, the no-name band of kids trying to make it big were really nervous and anxious about getting ready for their show. And so as he's telling 200 kids about Jesus, there's band guys running around behind him, setting up equipment, moving stuff, pulling out a guitar rack or a drum cage or a keyboard. And if that wasn't bad enough, once they got it set up, they started testing the equipment. It's like, check, 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 I don't remember anybody coming forward that night, anybody raising their hand, even though I thought it was a great presentation of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And usually, I would just walk away from a situation like that. But not that night. That night, I walked up to the stage area and I said, "What's the name of your band?" And they told me. I said, "Who's the lead singer?" And they told me, "That's like Billy over there." And I said, "Can I speak to Billy?" And they're like, "Yeah, yes, sir." Billy comes running over. And I said, "Billy, I bet you guys worked really hard on your music. But that guy right there was sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ, and you were so self-centered that you let your stage setup and your sound check get in the way of him sharing the gospel. And if you think you're going to grow a ministry of your own ability and not be humble before God, it's just not going to happen. Hope you have a good concert." Here's the thing. I'm sure these are good kids. I'm sure maybe Billy had a song that was about Jesus. Maybe they had a spoken part that invited kids into faith. I don't know. I didn't stay for their concert. But what I do know is that there was a man who had given his life to sharing the gospel with teenagers, and that Billy got in his way because Billy was so anxious about having a great concert and that he was going to do it of his own ability, and he couldn't see outside himself. And his band couldn't either. Well, in the Bible, we read about a different story. We don't read about doing things of our own ability. We read about leaning into God. And I want to share from 3 passages this morning. The first one I'm going to share with you, and then the third one we're going to spend a little bit of time in. So the first one comes from Philippians chapter 4, verse 12 and 13. Paul tells us this. He says, "I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I've learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little. For I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." Notice he didn't say, "I can achieve great victories in life because of Jesus Christ." That's how, when we print this verse on t-shirts, that's how we like to use it. He says, if I have little or plenty, if my stomach is empty or full, because of Jesus, I can do all things. And the next verse comes from Hebrews. It's from chapter 11 in Hebrews, which is sort of the hall of faith. For some folks at the end of this chapter, it didn't work out quite so well, but in this section, I want you to pay attention to what's going on here. This is pretty amazing. It says, "By faith, these people overthrew kingdoms, ruled with justice, and received what God had promised them. They shut the mouths of lions, quenched the flames of fire, and escaped death by the edge of the sword. Because they were so awesome and were so strong, they became strong in battle and put whole armies to flight." Did I mess that up? I think I messed it up just a little. Their weakness was turned to strength. It wasn't by their own ability. It was by their connection with God. It was by the yoke they had placed on their life of following God's call. But let's move on to that yoke passage. But we're going to start before the passage because it always helps us to know what happens before the passage. Jesus is having a little bit of a conversation. He prays and teaches. And in Matthew 11, verses 25 and 26, it says, at this time, Jesus prayed this prayer. Oh, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, thank you for hiding these things from those who think themselves wise and clever, and for revealing them to the childlike. Yes, Father, it pleased you to do it this way. Jesus is praying. We probably should pay attention when Jesus prays, right? And Jesus says in his prayer, he says, thank you for hiding these things from those who think themselves wise and clever. Now, Jesus' entire ministry happened in the shadow of powerful, influential people in society. Entire ministry. First, there was the Roman government, which owned Israel, it had conquered and owned Israel, but allowed the Jewish people certain limited freedoms in participating in their own legal and religious customs. And so these people that Jesus grew up in, the towns he grew up in, were owned by the Romans, but they were controlled by the Jewish high priests and Pharisees. And Jesus is praying. He's glad that God hid himself from the wise and the clever and revealed himself to the childlike. You see, if you were a Pharisee in that day, you were at the top of your class. None of Jesus' disciples were Pharisees because at some point in their life they got cut. Every Jewish boy was supposed to grow to be a Pharisee. It's a little bit like football in Valdosta, Georgia. Every boy is supposed to make it to the NFL, you know. But at certain times, they get cut. That one boy goes out for football in first grade and spends 3 weeks at practice and says, not for me. The next one maybe makes it a couple of years and in the Pee Wee leagues where you have the pound limit, and then middle school comes and he's like, man, there's no way I'm facing off against that guy that weighs 100 more pounds than me. I'm out, you know. And then middle school happens and maybe there's an injury or maybe something else happens, and then high school comes and it's like, what? I got to practice that much? And they want me to come to workouts in the summer and there's like a spring practice? I don't think so. And so the high school career ends. And then maybe we're really, really good in high school, but then we show up in college and we're just not quite as athletic as we thought. It was pretty easy back when we were at the local high school, but I get out on the college field and I'm no better than third string, or maybe because the game's so much faster and the people are so much stronger, I end up getting injured and I never make it past my freshman year. Man, I know that story a lot. And then maybe I get to go to tryouts in the pros, but I never make it past the scout team. And even though it's pretty good money, after 3 or 4 years on the scout team, I decide to do something else with my life, because who wants to get their head beat in by people who are twice as strong and twice as fast as they are for a living? You see, the Pharisees were like the NFL stars, and everybody else was like the people who didn't make it. They had been cut at some point. They had dropped out at some point. Every one of Jesus' disciples had dropped out. So Jesus not only says, God, thank you for hiding this from the wise and clever. Then Jesus goes on to say this in verse 27, Matthew 11, verse 27. My Father has entrusted everything to me. No one truly knows the Son except the Father, and no one truly knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son chooses to reveal himself. You see, here's what we think. We think the winners in the world have all the answers. And so we try to follow the winners. We try to emulate the winners. We really believe that climbing the social ladder will make our life work out. So we try to emulate people who we perceive have climbed the social ladder. We really believe that we can legislate utopia. So we try to vote and share a bunch of Facebook posts that will help us legislate utopia, all right? We really do believe that if we can achieve personal excellence, if we can win at more stuff, if we can get the right self-help book and the right regimen and the right program and the right degree and the right friends and live in the right neighborhood and drive the right car, then life's going to work out good and we'll be able to finally sing with great gusto and confidence. All I do is win, 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 hands up, hands down, and they stay there. Okay, I'm sorry. I really love it when I do something in worship and somebody just goes. It's one of my goals in life. But Jesus doesn't point to all that stuff. Jesus doesn't point to the Roman government. Jesus doesn't point to the Pharisees. Jesus doesn't point to the popular entertainers. Jesus doesn't point to the population. Jesus doesn't even point to personal excellence. What he says is, my Father has entrusted everything to me. And then he teaches some more in Matthew 11, 28 and 30. Then Jesus said, come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. What was the thing that made them weary? Oh, sure, they had problems, but what was the problem that made them weary? The people in power and who had influence in their culture lorded it over them. The people who had power and influence in their culture, namely the Pharisees, said to them, you're not good enough, you don't measure up. They were burdened with a religious law and a legal system that was not godly, but it was the social order of the day. A law that resulted in toil and drudgery, a law that could never be met, a law that was frustrating cycles of guilt and depression, a law that used people as a means to an end, a law that could never be achieved, a law that would always keep us in our place. And Jesus came to do something so different. He came to do something so different. Jesus said, all authority, all power has been entrusted to me. The burden I have is light. The yoke I have is easy. So what do you think? What do you think, Hope Church? Is it our own ability? I mean, Hope Church is awesome, right? We're going to be awesome. We're going to do awesome things. Our Hope Church, are we going to place the yoke of Christ around our neck? Because we need Jesus. Because people need Jesus more than they need our church. How about you? Is your life going to be awesome? Or do you need Jesus? Which one comes first? Awesome or Jesus? Let me put it this way. How about you? Is the yoke of Christ around your neck as you live out your life? Let me get specific. Is the yoke of Christ around your neck in your marriage? Is it going to be awesome, or do you need Jesus? Is the yoke of Christ around your neck with your house awesome, or Jesus? With your parents, awesome, or Jesus? With your kids, awesome, or Jesus? With your grades, awesome, or Jesus? With your body, awesome, or Jesus? With your clothes, awesome, or Jesus? With your car, awesome, or Jesus? I could keep going till 3 o'clock this afternoon, couldn't I? In this world, will always be judged as almost. Jesus doesn't say when. Jesus never said awesome that I know of. I don't think it was a word. But what Jesus says is, take my yoke. Take my yoke. And I'll provide rest for your weary souls. Okay. One example, and then we're going to close with a pretty amazing moment of worship together. What does it mean to be awesome in worship attendance? Like, how does this principle, I believe in God, but I trust more in my own ability, work itself out with worship attendance? Does it mean that we need to give God our least? Is that the opposite? Is that what it means? No. First thing it means, we need to show up. So, good job today. You did step one, all right? So if we're going to give God our best with worship, if we're going to take on the yoke of Christ with worship, it means, first of all, that we show up. And it means that we show up sort of prepared. It means that we get up and we take a shower. That's a good thing. We invite you to do that. It means that we plan to be here. It means that Sunday worship is not second in our life. We do it if. It means that it's first in our life, and we do something else if. And that when people say, I want you to come do so-and-so on Sunday morning, we change plans with them. And we say, hey, we'll do that later, that kind of thing. And we try to work out our life so that we can be here, right? It means that we get out of bed. It means we set an alarm. It means we take a shower. We hope it means that we put on a little deodorant, and maybe we brush our teeth, and we put on some clothes that we didn't wear yesterday when we were working in the yard. We also hope that means that we arrive alert and open and ready to be in worship and not just checking it off. That's what the yoke of Christ might look like. And that's just worship. And that's such a small part of the entire Christian life. But here's what we don't come do. We don't come to church and act like we've arrived. We don't come to Sunday worship because we're earning points in God's piggy bank so that we can cash them in later for something we want, because it's not about our ability. So, for example, we don't come to worship 10 Sundays in a row and then say, God, where's my new car? We don't come to worship 26 Sundays in a row and say, God, can't my husband please get a new shirt? Nobody's husband has a bad shirt they wear too much? No, nobody? Okay. We can go the other direction. You want it? No? Okay. We don't come to church to earn points because it's not about me. We come because of Jesus. We come because we want the yoke of Jesus in our life. Sunday morning is the foundation for our faith. It's the floor. It should be a launching pad for our faith. We come in God's power. We come humble to the Holy Spirit. And when we come, we have an opportunity once again to say, God, not my will, but yours. God, not my thoughts, but yours. God, not my words, but yours. God, not my fame, my glory, my excellence, but yours. God, not my marriage, but yours. Not my house, but yours. Not my parents, my kids, my grades, my body, my car, my career, but yours, Lord. And if we really have that kind of heart, pretty soon, worship won't be enough. And instead of backsliding from a weekly experience, we'll dive in with both feet because we recognize that it's about God's ability more than mine, and I need Jesus, and then we'll be so excited. We'll work to make sure that other people find Jesus in whatever way we're gifted in. Maybe it's taking care of children on Sunday morning. Maybe it's involved in mission outreach during the midweek. Maybe it's working in the lobby, giving people big hugs and saying hello. Maybe it's working up in the tech booth. Maybe it's coming up here because you have a secret musical talent that you're not letting us know about, right? Whatever it is. Whatever it is. Let me say this. Churches that are full of people trying to earn points for their own success instead of full of people taking on the yoke of Christ for all of life. Churches full of people who are trying to earn points for their own success are miserable places. You see, church can be the most awesome, amazing thing in the world, or it can be one of the worst places in the world. And it depends on whether it's about the church or whether it's about Jesus. Churches that stop trusting in God for the next step. Let me be clear. I'm not going to mess around with words. Churches that stop trusting in Jesus for the next step end up dead, dying, declining, hypocritical, godless, religious country clubs. But you know how they end up that way? Because the people of the church stopped putting the yoke of Christ on their life. It became about their ability and their success more than Jesus, more than the idea that people need Jesus. Do you need Jesus or church? I need a church that's full of Jesus. Jesus needs a church that's full of Jesus. We're going to sing. I'm going to invite Clay to come forward. And as we sing, I want to invite you to listen to the words, and then as we get to a place in the song where it says that God is in this place, I want to invite you to make that your prayer, your declaration, your affirmation, your creed today. That God is in this place. And as you sing those words, I want to invite you to do business with God, to take on the yoke of Christ, to say, God, I'm not going to trust in my own ability. And I recognize that your burden is light and that your yoke is easy. Clay.
Can't go back to the beginning. Can't control what tomorrow will bring, but I know here in the middle is the place where you promised to be. I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? As I walk now through the valley, let your love rise above every fear. Like the sun chasing the shadows, in my weakness your glory appears. You come, will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? Not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Come, Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Come, Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Yeah, yeah. Father God, we come to you. On our knees. We have put the world before you. We've put ourselves before you. We've lived for ourselves and not for you. Will you meet us here again? And we say again because we've done this before. Please come into this place, Father. Soften our hearts. Let us put our burdens onto you, Father. There's people in this room that they don't think they can make it. There's people in this room hurting. We just pray, Father, for your love, for your forgiveness. We just want to fall into you. We want to fall in love with you. Will you be here with us again? Not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want